Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson, and this is my review for Beetlejuice, which came out in 1988 and is directed by Tim Burton. The movie follows a young couple, played by Alec, Baldwin, and Geena Davis, who unexpectedly die in sort of a freak accident. They lose control of their car, and it goes off a bridge, mainly because a dog stepped off the only plank that was supporting them. But then they suddenly go back to their house, and they're not quite sure how they got back home, but it turns out that they are truly dead, and they're now ghosts because a new family moves into the house, and they are trying everything possible to scare them and get them out. But as hard as they try, they just can't seem to get the family out, and they ultimately rely on a bioexorcist named Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton. However, depending on this guy might not be the most sound idea possible. So Tim Burton really needs no introduction at this point. I've talked about a handful of his movies. Some of them, like Batman and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, have made it into my top 100 lists. And I'm not a fan of new Tim Burton. After Dumbo, I've given up on Tim Burton. I know directors change as their career moves on. They don't make the same movies that they make back in the day, but man, do I love the movies that Tim Burton made back in the day, especially Beetlejuice. Now, Beetlejuice didn't make my top 100 list, and I'll explain why near the end of the video, but this, for me, is the pinnacle of Tim Burton movies. Whenever I hear that name, Tim Burton, Beetlejuice is the first movie that comes to my mind. I know people usually go to Nightmare Before Christmas, and yeah, that's the other one, but he technically produced that movie. I'm talking solely about the movies he's directed. More than Pee-wee's Big Adventure, more than Batman, more than Ed Wood. Maybe on the same level of Edward Scissorhands, but Beetlejuice is the movie that comes to my mind immediately because it's got everything you'd expect from a Tim Burton movie. It's such a bizarre movie. If you've never seen Beetlejuice, then it's honestly a difficult movie to describe. I mean, the best I could even say is that it's a Tim Burton movie, but even then, it's just such a weird, bizarre movie that by all means shouldn't make any sense at all, and sometimes it doesn't, but you just go with it. Tim Burton made this movie right after doing Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and when you compare the two movies, Beetlejuice is so much more imaginative, and it's not as down-to-earth as Pee-wee's Big Adventure often seems. Pee-wee has some weird moments, sure, but nothing like Beetlejuice. The production design definitely helps give this movie its signature look, and you gotta give credit to Bo Welch, who is a genius throughout this entire movie. If you don't know who Bo Welch is, he's a production designer who's done a couple of other Tim Burton movies like Edward Scissorhands and Batman Returns, but he's also done movies like Men in Black and Kenneth Branagh's Thor, and he delivers some fantastic sets in this movie. It's just so imaginative, it's creative, it's very abstract when you get right down to it. It really goes to show you that Tim Burton is a true auteur. Every movie that he made back in the day before eventually doing Planet of the Apes, and even some of his movies afterwards, it feels like everything came from his mind directly. Like he made the whole movie himself. Another great aspect about this movie is Danny Elfman's score. His score for Beetlejuice immediately comes to my mind whenever I think of the definitive Danny Elfman Tim Burton score because it's so catchy, it adds to the quirky charm of this film. And it's because of Beetlejuice that I sometimes have a difficult time hearing other Danny Elfman scores like Spider-Man or his contributions to Age of Ultron and really soak in the fact that Danny Elfman did the music for this. The same guy that made the very bizarre and quirky score of Beetlejuice did something like Avengers Age of Ultron. That's something that still to this day I cannot wrap my mind around. And then you've got the actors in this movie. Obviously with Michael Keaton, he is the main star of the film. And what's really fascinating about Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice is that he doesn't actually pop up in the movie until about 45 to 50 minutes in. And this is a hour-and-a-half long movie. It's really short, and your title character doesn't show up until halfway through. When he's on, though, he commands every second he's on screen. The makeup is incredible, really makes Michael Keaton unrecognizable, and I feel like if he wasn't cast as Batman, he really could have made an interesting Joker, at least makeup-wise, because the black circles around his eyes reminds me of Heath Ledger's Joker. His whole look, outside the fact that he dresses like a bum throughout most of the movie, he looks like a methed out Joker. Probably would have been a better alternative than Jared Leto's Joker. Michael Keaton is also so unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do whenever he's around, but he's never really frightening. Not a bad thing at all, because this movie is very comedic, and he is never boring in this movie. He is always entertaining and has some great quotes as well. I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. Not to mention the fact that you're talking to a dead guy here. Now what do you think? You think I'm qualified? But the crazy thing about Beetlejuice not being in this movie until the halfway point is that you're never bored throughout the first half. Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis are very likable. They have great chemistry with each other. And when they die and realize that they're ghosts, Geena Davis has some of the best reactions to all of the supernatural stuff that's going on. A lot of her reactions here, I feel like you could just screen cap them and just make a whole scrapbook of Geena Davis reactions in Beetlejuice, because she is so good here. And then you also have Winona Ryder as pretty much the goth daughter of the family that moves into the house. And she's a typical deadpan Tim Burton character. I criticized the young girl in Dumbo for being just deadpan, but there was nothing interesting about that character. Winona Ryder's character is interesting because she's the only one who can actually see Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis as ghosts. Because as she says in the movie, live people ignore the strange and unusual, and she herself is strange and unusual. So it's a really bizarre movie. Sometimes it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you're not really supposed to ask questions with this movie. It's just so bizarre and abstract that you just kind of go with the flow. Although I will say, one of the reasons why I don't consider this one of my top 100 favorite movies of all time, despite the fact that I love Beetlejuice, is that the ending is a little messy. The ending does feel rushed, and you're just a little confused on how things are actually playing out. Now, I know I just said that this movie's so bizarre that you just don't ask questions, but this is the film's climax, and it ultimately doesn't make sense on how they actually resolve the climax. But besides all that, I love this movie. Everything that you love out of classic Tim Burton is in this movie. The great production design, the catchy Danny Elfman score, the good performances, and the very bizarre main character with Beetlejuice. I know I had problems with the way this movie ended and how everything got resolved, but I'm just gonna say, if you've never seen Beetlejuice, get off your ass and go see it right now. This is the perfect kind of movie to watch during Halloween. If you don't like horror movies at all, or you have kids, then I would say that this is kind of worth it. There are some crude moments in this movie, and there's definitely a part in the movie where Beetlejuice drops the F-bomb and then grabs his crotch, but I think kids are mature enough to handle it. So yeah, I absolutely cannot recommend this movie enough, and it's just one of those things where you kind of need to watch the movie for yourself to really understand it. And even then, you might have some trouble actually figuring out what this movie's about. And there you go, that's my review for Beetlejuice. And now I want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one